Up there with Super Couch. Remember Super Couch?
which was just
Two mattresses.
two mattresses. Terrible to lay on because you're always at like a right angle.
Yeah.
Shocking.
Playing hard, playing tough, just plain good. It's not good enough. We're gonna show you what league's all about. If there's a lesson to be learned, we're handing it out. This game is our game. This town is our town. Turn the heat up and listen to the crowd.
Good evening and welcome to the Joust. My name is Nagy. I'm here as always with my co-host Liam McNeil. Liam, how are you this very evening?
Nagy, I'm not bad. I wouldn't say that I'm wonderful. Obviously a hard weekend to live with. Wallabies went down. Knights went down. As is tradition, all the sporting teams I love just went to hell. Wanderers lost.
Yeah.
It's kind of... the weekend was a very apt summary of the last few years
Yes.
of my sporting life.
Yes, no, it wasn't fantastic. It wasn't the result we wanted heading down there to Shark Park on the Sunday 2 o'clock game. I think coming off the win against Penrith, we all thought that there could have been something there that we...
Spirits were high. The place was singing. The
Yeah.
town was buzzing.
Yeah, and and I was really looking forward to it because it looked like they weren't going to put a lot of points on us, and I thought, well, look how far we've come. And then they put a lot of points on us. And so look how far we came in 60 minutes.
Which is still better than not coming far in 60 minutes.
Yeah, no, look, it was a bit of it was a gritty game for a lot of it, and they end
Which
up...
the Sharks are good at.
They're good at grit. They're gritty men. It's a gritty place, Cronulla, as well. It's all that salt air.
Yeah, it rusts everything and everything decays. And
Yeah, unfortunately, their defence didn't decay and held pretty strong. Liam, what went right for you that game?
look, a few things actually did go right. I think the scoreline, while not, flattering the Sharks, I don't think the scoreline reflected
It heavily
how much we were in it.
It heavily
for the
favoured
first
the
60
Sharks, yeah.
It did, I would say, yeah. But a few things did go right. A couple of their real strike players, Andrew Fafita and Josh Dugan, we know what to expect out of Andrew
Yeah.
Fafita. There's big numbers, there's huge performance, but the Knights' defence managed to contain him pretty well. He still got his big numbers. He still ran really hard, drew in a lot of players, but he wasn't able to generate tries or anything off his offloading game, which he usually does. We're getting numbers in the tackle, and despite his huge effort, I don't think he had the explosive impact that other teams are used to.
Yeah.
Coming up against Andrew Fafita. So I thought they did a good job on him. Corey Dennis did a good job on Josh Dugan as well. I thought it was one of Dennis's best games in first grade, actually. He was very solid out there because Dugan was going out in plenty, and I thought he did a good job. And the goal line defence was generally pretty good. All of the Cronulla tries came out wide or off second phase play. When we had to defend the line, especially with 12 men when Aiden Guerra was off, I thought the defensive line held pretty strong. And again, they were showing signs that Cronulla couldn't get through us through the middle, which
Yeah.
has been a big problem in the last few years. And I think that middle is really starting to get shored up. So, there was a few things that went right. Another one was the hard work of a couple of members of the back five. We've got Ken Seo, Sean Kenny-Dowell, and Corey Dennis really working hard to get us out of yardage. And Mitch Pearce's kicking game was excellent again. So there were a few things that went right throughout that game.
I think we lost the middle battle. I think, in the middle third of the field, as everyone speaks about this day and age, the middle third, the important third where the forward battle is won and lost, and I think we lost it. And we really started to drop off as fatigue set in late in the second half. But as far as what went wrong, Liam, I think losing two key players in Connor Watson coming back after a month off with a groin injury to re-injure that groin is a real worrying sign. And if this was in the middle of the season, I think we would be looking at like a long stint without him, even though we did lose him for long stints for different things. But if you look at someone like Nathan Ross, for example, does the groin, comes back, does the groin again, don't see him again. And that's been, it feels like 6 weeks or something.
It's been
now.
a long time since Ross injured his groin. And just for listeners out there, we do remember that this is the lower groin he's injured. It's not the upper groin that we discussed earlier in the year.
The upper groin, yeah. You got your two upper groins because Mitchell Pearce did his
Mitchell Pearce did his top groin.
His top groin, yeah.
Connor Watson, however, has injured his bottom groin.
groin, which
Yeah.
is the leg groin.
Leg groin.
Rather than the arm groin. Yeah, no, it was very sad to see Lockie Fitz, who's been such an outstanding player all season, possibly robbed of... he will be robbed of an old boys' day. I don't think I'm embellishing too much by saying I don't think he'll be selected. Do you think embellishing is also our word of the week?
It's a very good word, Nagy.
It's embellishing.
Embellishing. To embellish.
To embellish. It was a very bad head knock. It was a friendly fire from Josh King coming around, and it was those classic sort of both taking a player and spinning around, and you almost catapult yourselves. And because the arms are both locked up, you're just sort of catapulting with your head straight forward. And it was just a bad knock of angle. It was one of the worst head knocks I've seen.
For any science fans out there, that was the result of centrifugal force. The centrifugal force of the two players coming around the outside. I believe the tackled player is the fulcrum point.
Yes.
And then the two players coming around, because they're far from the fulcrum point, you gain extra speed. As opposed to centripetal motion, which is closer to the fulcrum.
Thank Christ for that. I went to bed last night. I thought, how did it all happen?
That's how it happened.
Thank you, Liam.
Scientific explanation. There was a couple of problems though, Nagy. Again, without Ponga, we're starting to show the Knights looked a bit directionless inside the attacking 20. There was no one really straightening. And what we saw when we finally did straighten the attack was that great try from Dan Safidi. And it mirrored closely last week's try from Sione Mataudio. With quick hands, straight running lines, you find a gap. But that's happening altogether too rarely. So we've shown once you straighten the attack, you can get through the middle. But it just wasn't happening enough. There was too much crabbing across field, trying to find a gap without capitalising and pushing through the middle. So I thought that was a worry, that the Knights without Ponga looked just not overly threatening in attack.
Especially when we lost Connor Watson. You saw Mitchell Pearce. He was just lost without, he would use Nick Meaney in like the third and fourth as a bit of a runner. And then you could see he just didn't have anywhere to go to for a strike play. And he ended up sort of dumbing and running himself a lot. And Pearce is a great runner of the ball. He's one of the better half runners on his day. But that you need to have those options out wide, and you need a little bit more direction. And I think you can definitely tell there's a different side without Slade Griffin. And Danny Levi obviously plays a very different game. But it was a game of, I think, two halves. I thought in the first half, with all that went against us, which was mainly the penalties. And this is something that I'll touch on quite heavily because the penalties...
Touch heavily, please do.
Yeah, it was really firm touch, so prepare for it. There was 12 penalties in the first half. 9 of them were against the Knights. You look at the two teams, and it obviously, you could say you didn't get the rub of the green. It was on at Shark Park, but it was just ridiculous at some points, and I think that was really shown when we got Aiden Guerra sent for the multiple penalties, infringements in a row, and then there was the warning, and then I feel like now when there's multiple and then a sin bin, it's like when you've given that warning, the ref is now looking for the next penalty instead of looking at the game. They've made the decision that, all right, I'm going to send someone now, and I have to make a point of it. And because if you look at the Guerra penalty that got him in the bin, it was a pretty soft penalty. And I don't think if that was the first of the infringements, that wouldn't have been a penalty. But it's almost like they build and they sort of they play on each other, and then you get this sort of this penalty beast.
It's a knock-on effect, if you will. The first penalty starts, and then it just snowballs. Now.
Snowballs. What's the word when it's extra penalties?
Extra penalties. More penalties. That'll be our word of the week next week. If you listeners can tell us what word Nagy's thinking of, that'll be.
It's like if there was a zombie apocalypse.
Yes.
And then and then if I bite you, and then one other person, then those two people.
Incremental.
Incremental. Is that incremental? Exponential.
Yes.
Thank you very much. We got there in the end.
Should we do
guys.
2 words of the week this week, Nagy?
Yeah, let's do it.
Exponential. Well done, Nagy. Well done.
Thank you very much.
But we just couldn't handle the Sharks' power game.
No.
I mean, they were, like you said, they won the battle in the middle third. They outrun us. They outrun the Knights 1,851 run meters to 1,279.
Yeah.
That is a considerable gap. But again, it was built on the back of having a lot of possession from those penalties. And Nathan Brown said something interesting in the press conference.
Yeah.
I'm going to touch on this because you've just discussed the refereeing. The first question to him was, what did you think about the officiating? As is the first question for every game. And he said, look, all he'll really say about it is that Cronulla are a very experienced team of old heads, people with gamesmanship who know what to do, when to do, playing in front of a home crowd. And he said maybe not the game that should be given to a rookie referee. Might have been a bit overawed, didn't want to penalise, the old rough and tumble blokes who'd probably beat him up after the game if they disagreed with one of his calls. And I think Brownie may have a fair point there. It just didn't feel like the two teams were being penalised
equally.
Yeah. And Mitch Pearce obviously had his big blow-up at the ref when Guerra was sent off. I'm inclined to agree.
Yeah,
with Mitchell.
He had a case. And
very good case.
If he said nothing, everyone would have said like, "Oh, we should have at least pleaded a case." But it was too late by that point. Obviously, it never went back the other way, and we never really saw the swing when it finished with 5-12. So there was much less penalty. 12 penalties in the first half and only 5 in the second. So that's pretty crazy. And it was just, for the amount of ball that Cronulla got, I think they got out of jail a lot of times. Well, they didn't, they just got piggybacked up the field a lot of times. And a lot of those penalties came inside their 30, and it was just and now they're in an attacking play. It just didn't seem fair.
But then even when they didn't get piggybacked up the field, one other thing that Cronulla did remarkably well, and that they've been known to do remarkably well, is they play the transitions unbelievably. They'll, receive the ball in a kick on the last tackle. They'll turn their defense into attack. They counter-attack off the back of a kick, or the couple of charge downs they did. They're so good at, sustaining pressure, and then bam, just breaking out the second they touch the ball.
Yeah.
And that's what really, I think, put paid to the Knights. We were hanging in there, we were sticking it to them, but then every time they'd get a turnover, be it a kick on the last, one of their charge downs, or just a slight error from the Knights, they would just rush their way upfield, and all of a sudden they're on the attack. Especially with the Wade Graham charge down. He chased the ball down 30 metres, and I think they scored not long after. They play those transitions so well. So if you have the slightest error, bam, they're down attacking a try line before you even know it. And they did that remarkably well on the weekend, and it makes it so hard to beat a team when you're applying pressure, and then your slightest weakness, they just pounce.
It was a big reshuffle in defence, as well as Jamie Bureau going to the centre role, Sione playing 5'8", which was obviously a new role for him. He hasn't done that since last year against the Cowboys, I believe. Up there, he wore the number 6, but not known as a 5'8", and it was very interesting. It was a very interesting reshuffle. We even saw Luke Yates going to the hooking role, somewhere where he's trained at last year, but he's never had a first grade opportunity to do so, and it showed.
It did. His passing game was not great.
Yeah, it looked like he was caught up in the moment. Also, what didn't help him was because we didn't have Watson or Ponga there as ball players, and it was only Pearce. You saw when Pearce tried to take the game back through his kicking, which he does a lot, and if we got down there and build a bit of pressure, that the pressure on that kick on the 5th was just immense, and you saw a couple of charge downs, and and Luke Lewis is so good at it, just putting pressure on that kicker and knowing exactly he's going to go to Pearce and rushing up. So there was a few bad passes there from dummy half, which he was trying to catch around his ankles and look up and see an absolute monster of a man running through and putting pressure on him. And what annoyed me, what you brought up just before, Liam, as well, the first question of the press conference: what do you think about the officiating? So Brownie hasn't mentioned anything about the officiating, but the press feels like it's there, let's tease this out. So obviously the media recognises that game was officiated poor, and they know that Nathan Brown can't say anything about the officiating, but they ask him directly about it.
They're dicks.
So it's there's obviously even they talk about the media just who are just spectators in the end, and social commentators, they're just all right, so we're going to try to get you angry and try to Jeff Tuvey you and say, that was ridiculous, and the referee should be looked at. But Brownie knows he can't say it, so it's just this big game of cat and mouse, saying I'm going to ask you the question that I know you can't answer, even though we both know that the officiating sucked in that game.
But that's been the rugby league media in a nutshell this year. Everything they've done has been to stoke these flames of, discontent and anger, and they're asking all these people these questions. They know they can't answer them.
Yeah.
If they ask any of the coaches they've interviewed, are you coaching at this club next year? And they're like, well, I can't tell you even if I was.
Yeah.
What the hell's the point? And they're using that to just throw rumours around and say, well, we heard this, but they can't say anything, so they can't refute it. If you go through the various articles, especially around the officiating and the coaching, they've thrown every single possible thing that could happen just out as rumours. Said, we we have some mail that this might be happening, and no one said that it's not.
Yeah.
So it's happening. You're like, well, that's not how this works. The onus is not on them to disprove these things that you're saying. The onus is on you to make sure that what you're saying is a true and accurate statement.
It's a crazy game that we follow, isn't it? Like,
It is, isn't it, Nagy?
Hats off for this week, Liam.
Oh, Nagy. I thought it would never happen. This is an unparalleled week, ladies and gentlemen. Joshua King, for me, gets the hats off. He wasn't a standout by any means, but given the way he's played this year, I thought he really stepped up. He had 91 running meters with 25 post-contact. He had a line break assist. He had 3 offloads, 27 tackles for only 1 miss.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing for me,
Try assist.
a 1 try assist.
Yeah.
That's incredible. And I we've given him a bit of stick on here for maybe not being the player that we needed in first grade or not living up to potential. But, on the weekend, on Sunday, he had the really solid, reassured, while not being spectacular front row game that we've kind of hoped he would have at some point, and he finally did it. So well done, Josh King. Very proud of you.
Well done, Josh King. Yeah, it was it was definitely his best game he's had this season, and he's been below par in a lot of games for a lot of different reasons, and I think he brought himself back up to par. So it's sort of looking at him, when you look at someone with beer goggles and you think, gee, they're attractive after a few beers. We've looked at him, Josh King's form with sort of beer goggles now, just saying like, I tell you what, and any other day of the week you wouldn't really give him 2 looks, but tonight eyes are on Josh King.
As opposed to people like us.
Yeah,
People get their beer goggles on and say, geez, you're still ugly. Sorry, boys.
You're still dog ugly. For me, look, there was probably, performance-wise, I think Mitch Barnett tried his guts out.
Yeah, he did. He ran for about 151 metres, I think. Plenty of tackles.
I think that's I think he's probably season high, running over 50 contact metres, post-contact metres as well.
Had to be shuffled around as well, so he would have. I think he moved back. He started in the middle, and then moved back to the edge. So, there was a bit of moving around, and he took a lot of really big runs. I thought he was very good, yeah. Yeah,
no, it was good to see that that he was playing well, and he had that grit. He still had a few errors in his game, but he was trying things as well. In a game that we had to throw a lot at them, I think he kept the energy up, and it played well. Also, honourable mention to Corey Dennis.
Agreed.
For the first half, he made some good early contact on Josh Dugan as well. And just
Fafita was running at him a fair bit as well, and I thought, he held his own really well. They went around
a couple
the
of
King
times,
CO straight for 2 tries, but there was no lack of effort. I think Corey Dennis and Ken CO in the last 2 games have really, really shown a good bit of improvement.
If you look at that side that Cronulla plays with, usually with Matt Moylan in the side as well, it's pretty crazy the kind of talent they've managed to recruit and retain. It was mentioned through the week that they're attempting to get the 2014
the Blues team,
the New South Wales Blues
They're basically
side.
signing up Laurie Daly's Blues team, which is quite
which is
an interesting tactic because they lost.
The 2014 one.
Oh, 14, yes, 14. Sorry,
because it was like the likes of Matt Moylan. I'm not sure if he played 4. He might have played 2015.
No,
Anyway,
he was after. Yeah,
it was after. So you got Matt Moylan, you got Aaron Woods, Fafita,
Luke Lewis, Wade Graham, I think, was in there.
Yeah, he's in the mix, and then you've got Paul Gallen. So it's
the captain of that very team.
Of the very side. So, but then you look at Seguiaro had a huge impact when he came on the field as well, and if they've got someone like Seguiaro and he's only getting 25 minutes a game. So it's just showing you how much talent they have.
It's ludicrous, yeah. So to come up against, and then not
Valentine
only that,
Holmes as well. Valentine,
he was unbelievable. Well, that was it. With about 20 minutes to go, we were still in the game, and then Val just flicked the switch, and he said, "All right, boys, it's the Val Holmes show now." But the other thing was, with all of that strike power, I thought the Knights nullified their kind of big names pretty well.
Yeah.
But then you just see the unheralded players had a day. Kurt Capewell at centre was incredible. He was making massive yards every time he ran. Sasai Feki on the wing had one of the best games you'll ever see from a winger. Who was the other one I wrote down? There was Val Holmes, obviously, shredded us. Young Kyle Flanagan had a pretty good debut. He wasn't bad.
Did what he needed to do, but he had the strike around him that he only had to do is give the ball to the players. I made that sound very simple. All he had to do was give the ball to the players that scored the tries.
But at the end of the day, rugby league's a very simple game.
It's a very simple game.
Sometimes played by simple people. And podcasted about by simple people.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, commentated on by very simple people.
But that's worrying, and I think that shows a lot about the Sharks, that even if you nullify their star players, their best players, they've got players all over the park who can just tear you apart.
Yeah, I think success breeds success, and that's what's that sentence? Capewell.
Kurt Capewell.
Capewell. Yeah, he just tore us up as well. So, But what I didn't like about the game, officiating wise, was it seemed like there was a few times where there was a call for an infringement in the ruck where it would happen, no whistle would be called, and then the Sharks players would appeal for it, effectively appeal for a penalty, and then it was given. So, and as soon as that started to happen, it seemed like obviously Sharks have taken ownership over this game, and that's who the referees have eyes to. In a crowd of probably somewhere between 12 and 15,000.
It was 11.5.
11.5. So in quite an intimate stadium, with mood lighting and
I suppose you call it a small boutique stadiums. They're calling them these days.
Boutique stadium, yeah. They can make a lot of noise with that many fans there. So, you could say that there was probably a lot of spectators, awing, and when a player appeals, they tend to get that. But it was really highlighted for me, and I think we got a clip here of Fafita taking the ball up and then appealing for a crusher tackle. And I think, Elliot, we got a clip here. So it's we're defending a line. It's coming to last. Fafita nearly gets it. It's a scramble. It's down. And now there's no penalty here. And then obviously he grabs his neck. The ball goes down. Now that was replayed. With a video ref, and then the ref said, that's a penalty. Now, that didn't seem like a crusher tackle the way the rules have brought it in to protect the players. That seemed like a player that, the crusher tackle in my perception is like, you got one player around the legs, another player up top, holding, dropping from a distance, and then forcing pressure down on the back of the neck and on the tailbone.
What this was just an awkward incident where Fafita tried to burrow through close to the try line. He naturally ended up under Mitch Barnett's arm, and Barnett trying to take him to ground. He's got bent out of shape a little bit.
Yeah,
definitely not what we'd see a crusher tackle, but he's on report. He's going to go to the judiciary, and it could go either way. We saw Lachlan Fitzgibbon get 2 weeks for his fairly minimal crusher tackle, and then Will Chambers gets 3 weeks for one of the worst I've seen.
Yeah, exactly right. The Will Chambers one looks like the one you want to keep out of the game. Like is the modern.
Just keep that whole man out of the game. Will Chambers, keep that man away.
Every year, the players seem to find a new way. It was it was the chicken wing, and there was the cannonball, and then originally it was the grapple tackle, working the neck around. But then the crusher tackle, which no one wants to see a spinal injury. Especially after. The horrible thing that happened to Alex McKinnon, and we want to get that out of the game and make sure we're protecting the welfare of the players.
Easy solution: kick Melbourne.
But
notice these have all started down there in that wonderful city they all love so much for reasons I can't understand. Get rid of them.
Yeah, it's just take them out of the comp. We don't need them, Liam.
We don't. We'll send them to Perth or something. But hats back on Nagy.
Hats back on.
I've got to give it to Danny Levi. I thought he had a bit of a shocker. He threw the forward pass. There were some errors. Gave away a few penalties. He tried to play that niggling little annoying guy to Andrew Fafita and just got ragdolled. I think, Danny's really, while Slade Griffin's out, he's really got to be pushing for that number 9 jersey. He really needs to be, putting his stamp on it. And I don't think he did that this week. It was an off game for him, and I hope he doesn't carry that, into the end of the season, into the preseason. You want to finish on a high, so I'm hoping for a really big game for him next week because I think he'll be disappointed with that performance.
I think he will be too. Obviously, he showed a lot of emotion to show that he was frustrated with his own performance. There was about a 10-minute period where there was about 3 errors or bad decisions coming from Danny Levi, and he is like we forget how good of a player he is. I think playing second fiddle to Slade Griffin and how well Slade Griffin played for the first 2/3 of the season, I think we just all sort of forgot about Danny Levi, and he had to play probably a more pressured game to show that he was worthy of that number 9 starting. And then so I think he's trying to take ownership over it and probably taking a few risks, but he did lack some decision making. There was times where we were building pressure, and then on the 4th he decides to run from dummy half to try to get the penalty. That's good intentions, and it's that good grubby hooker that we like to have. Because when it pays off, it's a great result. But if you misread it, and you've just wasted a tackle. But what really kills it, especially in a side like that, is that you don't have your hooker there on the 5th to give good delivery to your half, and you have to get a back rower or someone who's as soon as they're looking around for the half, you're like, we're in trouble here.
That's not good.
You need direction, and so there's. Danny Levi is also my hats back on for this week. Mainly from that period that it was sort of the game was still up in the air.
It was in the balance. It was very much in the balance around that time, and the forward pass came when we had some momentum. We're attacking their line, and then forward pass to Guerra, and boom, there goes the momentum. Thought Edric Lee had a great game as well.
Well, that was a
excellent signing.
Shining light to see Edric Lee playing some good football, at this end of the season, right before coming to the Knights. And we didn't injure him, which was nice.
We're very un-Knights-like. Yeah, we traditionally we would have gone out with a trolley pole down the socks and hit him in the ghoulies or something, because that seems to be the Knights' want. To injure players before they come to the club. But he tried his best to injure a few future teammates, put on a few good hits.
Yeah, he was a big force. He was definitely noticeable out there, and obviously Chad Townsend finding him out wide with a few floating passes, and they had that up and in sort of defence, and I think Edric Lee just too big, too strong, too quick around the side, and the Sharks just having good direction to know Chad Townsend every time that defence came up and in to put pressure on, he just waited and floated past out. But he is a premiership winning halfback. I think we often forget he played in that 2016 season so well. And just it adds to their huge talent pool. They're probably going to make a big threat in the finals, actually being a top side that's playing well in the finals, towards the finals. So,
well, that's it. This is Cronulla's time of year. This is when they come into their own. This is where they start playing the footy they know they can play. I think they could be dark horses to win. They've just got so much experience and talent, but it's the experience. It's an old team. But it doesn't feel like a granddad's army type team yet.
No,
they're old, but they've still got it. Also, I thought it was a really nice touch. They handled Luke Lewis's final home game really well. It's good to see him, as much as it sucks to lose, it's good to see him leave Shark Park a winner. He's been one of my absolute favourites for, pretty much since 2003.
Yeah.
And to see him go out like that and get the respect that he deserves from the fans, and everyone hung around, they cheered him off, then cheered Chris Hyington off as well, which I thought was a really nice touch. I thought they handled that all really well, and obviously the game was played under somber circumstances, more to touch on in the news, but I thought they handled the whole occasion of the day. Cronulla handled it really well. Another matter for the Dragons entirely, but we'll go into that more later on.
We'll get into that in the news. Actually, we're going to take a quick halftime break, and we'll be right back for the news and the sack, Liam's sack. We'll see you soon.
Yum.
See you in a second, Jesters. Burst in. No, sorry, I was just coughing.
They're next to each other.
Welcome back to the second half of the Jousters. We've got a huge news segment coming up. Liam, do you have the time?
Time for the news. Nagy.
It's a brimming news cycle.
It is.
This one.
Still brimming.
The 24-hour news cycle really, makes it difficult to talk about the whole news because it just keeps on flowing.
It keeps happening, so I keep forgetting when I go to do my research to get the news today, what's happened this week, or it feels like some of these stories came out months ago, but because of the 24-hour news cycle, it was Wednesday when they came out. Now, first item in the news, Nagy. This is one we discussed earlier in the year. It's reared its ugly head again, if you'll pardon the pun. Dylan Napa and his horrible tackling technique. Elliot, I believe we've got a clip here.
Yeah.
This is Dylan Napa's horrifying tackling technique. You remember the last time he did this was against the Broncos, where he broke Corbin Sims' jaw, and he's done it again against Andrew McCulloch. You can see he was knocked out before he hit the ground, the poor fella. He was unconscious before he'd touched grass. And Dylan Napa has been found guilty by the NRL Match Review Committee, and he's been given a 3-week suspension.
Liam, how'd you see the tackle?
Shithouse. It was disgusting. It was really, really bad, especially given this is something he's done before.
Yeah.
And, was told the NRL the Match Review Committee didn't punish him.
Yeah.
Todd Greenberg came out and said that was a mistake. He should have been charged, and that he needs to alter his tackling technique. He said no to that. I'm not changing my tackling technique. And he's almost killed a second person. It's reckless. It's stupid. It's highly dangerous, and the fact that he won't change his tackling technique for some stupid reason that no one can work out, he's going to kill someone. He's going to hit someone in the temple. They're going to die, and everyone's like, "Oh, but it was an accident." It wasn't an accident. It was well, yes, it was an accident, but it was reckless. If you put yourself in a position where an accident can go so wrong like that, that is purely recklessness.
Obviously, he's one of those players that come out and really want to, put that hit on. He's known as a bit of a hitman in the NRL, and he's been playing a little bit off the bench this season. Now he's got a chance to start for the Roosters, and they're playing reasonably well coming into this final series, or they've lost a couple. But you know how it is. It's so obviously he's got a lot of weight in his shoulders to perform, and obviously he's just channeled that aggression incorrectly, and I have to 100% agree as far as, you can't make contact with the head, even if it is with your head. These things can happen, you know what I mean? But if that was a shoulder, that would be a penalty. If that was his swinging arm, it would possibly be a send-off doing that sort of damage. The fact that it was with his head, that's the difference. And
that's the argument people have brought up. They said, it's a head clash. Head clashes happen every week. Do you send other players for head clashes? It's like, well, no, but the other players who are suffering a head clash aren't generally leading with their head and their arms out behind them. They're not hitting their head by doing.
Yeah, you went launching forward. Yeah, it's one of those things. With this is not a game where people take dives. And to see a player that's knocked out before they hit the ground, it's not nice. To show how nasty they thought that was when it happened live, it wasn't shown at the stadium. Yes, it's at the stadium. They saw no replay of that because obviously whoever was in the comms truck just decided, no, we're not going to show that on television because it's a family time.
It is a family time and a family game.
And that's the other thing. It's taken so long to try to wrestle the whole rugby league as the thugs game out, and you can always say that we love big hits, and that's when they took the shoulder charge out. And people were saying, but that the highlight reel hits the shoulder charge, and everyone looks at the Joel Clinton, Sonny Bill Williams hit and thinking, if they're showing that and they've just taken it out of the game. But basically, I saw them, they're taking it out of the game to avoid that. The Greg Inglis hit on Dean Young in 2013-ish. I think it was. I might be speculating, but
no, I think you're right.
But having him just leading with the shoulder and hitting a man who's about half a foot shorter than him and hitting him square in the noggin, knocking him out, and you just see no one likes to see a player and that because it happened early in the season as well with Corbin Sims. Even though a lot of Knights players were probably silently golf clapping Dylan Harper for breaking Corbin Sims' jaw, but it's not something we want to see in heavy contact with the head, especially this season, last season with the HIAs and we're trying to look after the player welfare as we spoke about before. Head clashes will happen in heavy contact, but as long as you're not leading with the head.
Well, that's it. And everyone's saying it's a head clash. It's bound to happen. It is a head clash. It is bound to happen. However, you still need to have a semblance of risk minimization. So a head clashes happen, but we're cutting down on the ways they can happen. One way a head clash can't happen is if you don't run into someone with your head as the primary method of contact or whatever. So people say, but head clashes are bound to happen. It's like, yes, they are bound to happen, but we're trying to minimize the manner in which they can happen and the frequency with which they can happen. And, a tackling style like that, you're going to do something like that more often than if you change your technique to a more normal person tackling technique.
Was it a send-off in your eyes, or you reckon a sin bin suffice?
Oh, that's a doozy. Yeah, give it a send-off.
No, look,
he headbutted a bloke.
He headbutted a bloke and took him out of the game as well. And you can see how dangerous this could be if this was allowed to continue on. And if you could lead with the head. And some blokes just have a hard head. Nate Miles did it for years.
He did.
But I can't remember too many hits like that from Nate Miles. I feel like he was leading the head into the chest. I don't know.
Yeah, I remember Origin, the year he got a few put on his chin. He was just throwing his head around willy-nilly. Yeah. But it was more working over the ribs. It was like that. Remember in that episode of The Simpsons where they have the elephant?
And he runs with
it was like that.
I thought you meant when all the Homer relatives come and they put the pans on their head.
Yeah, that was Dylan Narpa's style. Whereas Homer's, the
elephant one.
Yeah. Who's the bloke we're talking about? Nate Miles.
Nate Miles.
Yeah, he was more like the elephant one. Where
Nate Miles was the elephant, yeah. And then
like that. I'm sorry if you users couldn't see that.
Yeah, a lot of the time also people listen to this show and they don't watch it.
Well, you should watch it. It's great. It's really good watching.
It's a beautiful platform. So Dylan Harper, 3 weeks I think is probably what it deserves. There's people that are talking that it should be more. It's 3 weeks at this end of the season as well. He misses out on the final series. And if they do make the grand final, he might be back for it. But, he's taken the important part of the season out and he has to sit on the sidelines. So
if they'd got him on the first one, 3 weeks would not have been good enough. But because they didn't get him for the first one, it's arguably his first offence of this particular offence. So 3 weeks is pretty.
And what he's done now, because obviously everyone's talking about him, there's eyes on him now. So his tackling technique, he's just known as a guy that can be reckless with his tackling. So he's going to have to, when everyone says change his technique, he's just going to have to, aim, go a bit lower. Like, you can't have that. If that happens again, they're going to call for him to get out of the game because he's, tarnishing it. So
agreed. But so that's that. Next piece of news, and this is a big one, Newcastle fans. The great the greatest, the best, the eighth immortal. He will be coming out of retirement.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, he will not be pulling on the red and blue. Now, Andrew Johns has been named to play in Warrington's physical disability team against the South Sydney Rabbitohs as part of the inaugural Rugby League Disabled World Club Challenge. So both teams have a side specifically for players with physical disabilities.
Yeah.
Matt King and Adam Hills will be playing in the South Sydney side to play against Warrington. I think it's in Sydney. Maybe.
It's going to be interesting. Yeah, I know that they're touring a few games around.
Yeah.
Look, I'm a huge fan of this. Not to say that I think Joey has a disability, but he's terribly injured. He's definitely acquired some pretty physically demanding injuries and life-changing injuries over his life, and especially with his neck. And I think he's just going to go out there as a bit more of a an
ambassador, which I think is great. I think it's exactly what this particular game and this format of the game that we don't hear much about. It needs an ambassador like that.
It's going to give a lot of people going to be watching this game because Joey Johns is playing.
It adds legitimacy, Nagy.
Yeah,
it adds a lot of legitimacy to it.
And there's a lot of the players. And there's a comp in Sydney as well with the NRL as under the NRL banner with some NRL sides of. Playing with players with a disability, playing a company. I follow them on Facebook. Follow them on Facebook as well. There's some great stories and coming out of there as well. And basically, you look at it as you've got players that either used to play the game and then they couldn't anymore because they've acquired a disability, or they're born with additional needs and then they get the opportunity to play sort of on their level and play. Some incredibly tough football because these players still love it. Love the game like everyone else. And I think a lot of players, people had the opportunity to play when they were younger, and quite often, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, this sort of thing didn't exist. So it's giving people the opportunity to really get out there and have a go, just like everyone else. So.
And I hope the NRL really pushes it because for so long, rugby league was very one-dimensional. It was played by blokes. And generally big blokes who were fully fit, and that was about it. But now we're starting to see, with a lot of work the NRL's doing, there's so many more avenues for people who aren't your traditional rugby league play. We've got a women's comp now, which is amazing. We've got this physical disability league set up. I believe, there's a few comps run for people with intellectual disabilities. So it's opening up rugby league because that's, one thing that rugby league's always done poorly. They've been very insular. Like, well, you're in or you're out. And if you're out, well, bug you. We're just going to yell at the people who are in. And it's opening up rugby league to so many people who, wouldn't have been able to play in the past because they weren't part of the catchment, I guess, of who can and can't play rugby league.
In the end, it's the people's game, rugby league. You know what I mean? Like it's followed by everyone, and especially in the east coast of Australia. So it allows a whole new avenue for people to come and be a part of it. And especially when you're sitting around the pub and sharing some rugby league stories of when you're just out there playing park footy, and it's beautiful because it doesn't matter. You can have those same conversations no matter what grade you're playing. God knows I've got heaps of them, and I only ever played fourth grade. So so it was it allows everyone just to be a part of it and join in the rugby league community. I'm looking forward to that game. I'm looking forward to watching it.
I think it'll be a ripper. The more people who can play rugby league, the absolute better.
Yeah.
It'll be So I love it. Absolutely love it. Next item in the news.
Yeah.
Now, this whole furor around regarding Kalen Ponga and what some fans are calling him basically signing for the All Blacks. I think the fans have gone a bit nuts on this one, so I'm going to kind of set the scene as to what actually happened. Now, a few fans, I think, around the rugby league saw a soundbite of Ponga saying, I'd love to play for the All Blacks one day, and basically took this as a tacit understanding that he's leaving us next week to go to New Zealand, join a Super Rugby team. It's not. What it was... during the game in New Zealand, he stayed over there with his family. Obviously, being a good Maori boy, he did some work with New Zealand's Maori TV channel, I think. And obviously, being New Zealand, they're going to, and him having a rugby union background, they're going to throw that question in. But it was at the end of about a 20-minute discussion. He didn't go there to talk about that. He didn't bring it up. They simply said, if you were going to play rugby union, do you reckon you'd play for the All Blacks? And him being such a competitive and high-achieving player, what's he going to say to that? He's going to say no. No, I'd rather play, subbies in Canterbury. No. He's going to say, yes, of course I'd love to play for the All Blacks. That's a dream. One day, maybe. He didn't say he's going to.
It's the pinnacle. It's the pinnacle of rugby union, and that game is on, especially the All Blacks, on a completely different stage, a world stage. which rugby league, can't provide. I do think there is a concern around this. When I say there's a concern, it's just managing his sort of expectations and also his ability, because you have a player that's obviously super talented. People say that should he play fullback, should he play 5'8"? He could be Santa Claus if he wanted to. The man can do anything he wants. Also, when you look at that, he's because he's so young and so talented, 20 years old. He played finals with the Cowboys. Hopefully he can play a grand final. But if you start ticking all these boxes of things to do in rugby league and achieving all these goals, he's very well. He's in contention for the Dally M this year, in his first real year of first grade. So you think, like, if he starts ticking these boxes so quickly in one contract worth of playing in his early 20s, if he wins an Origin series with Queensland, for instance, next season, God, I hope not.
God forbid.
I'm just saying, like, if he starts ticking these boxes, much like Israel Folau did, comes on the scene, incredibly talented guy, and hyper competitive too. Wins a series, wins an Origin series, plays for his country numerous times, does a tour, and you think, well, what else is there for me to achieve in this game? I've sort of, I've done it, bought the T-shirt, and I'm looking for other opportunities. That opportunity at the time, for some reason, was going to play for Greater Western Sydney, and
money
it
made
was
that
money.
happen.
But like, you could see the appeal. It was like, well, he could stay in the game and had that legacy. But if anything, he still really has that legacy. He's got a highlight reel that and he managed to do that in about 3 years rather than 12.
And that's it. People still discuss Israel Folau. He left rugby league an eternity ago, and yet people still discuss, how good he was, what he did, all his achievements. But I think the other thing that people who have said all these things about him have forgotten that we've still got him for 4 years. He's contracted till 2021.
Yeah, three. But this is his first of 4.
His first of 4. So
So-
we've still got him for another 3 years.
Yeah.
And he seems like the kind of player who wouldn't break a contract. So the worry
I don't
that
think
I
so.
saw everywhere,
No,
I don't
no.
get it.
He's not breaking any contract. He's not showing. But he's by the end of this contract with the Knights, he'll be still a pup. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he has opportunities elsewhere. There hasn't been any rugby league player, like, Thurston's come out and said through the week that in 2010 he was nearly scouted to go play rugby union.
And we remember, of course, when Joey was looked at by the Wallabies very strongly.
Yeah, in 2004. And look, it's happened. It's just one of these games because we share like similarities with another code. You're right. You played footsie.
I got my foot tangled in the cord.
I didn't know what was going on under the table. Actually, I knew exactly what was going on.
That's why we can't have a glass table.
If these legs could talk. But it's just one of those things. Rugby union's going to come after the top tier talent, and that's what's going to happen again. But hopefully, rugby league, he treats him well enough to the fact that he enjoys still playing the game and falls in love with the game like everyone does, and doesn't want to leave it, and shows that he has so much more to offer. And I getting nominated for the Ken Stevens Medal as well, showing that he loves being a complete player, both on and off the field. And I think, making as many people happy as he does and doing all the work that he does off the field, I think that's going to also keep him in the game.
And to a certain extent, the onus is on the NRL, the Newcastle Knights, and the fans of rugby league and the Newcastle Knights to make this a game that he doesn't want to leave. We want to basically give him no choice by having the situation be that, he's at the Knights saying, this is amazing, I love this, I'm never leaving.
Yeah.
So you can say all you want about, the All Blacks may poach him one day, but what you really need to look at is let's, turn our game into the best game ever, and he'll never want to leave.
Yeah, no, I totally agree.
Now, last item in the news. This is a bit of a sad one. Through the week, obviously, rugby league lost one of its great blokes. He was a great player. Lance Thompson passed away at 40. He was one of the great guys of the game. He came in to first grade 17. He was still in high school. He just gave everything to rugby league. Countless players have come out and said, how good of a teammate he was, how good of a friend he was. He always busted his ass for both the Dragons and the Sharks, and it hit me pretty hard because he was one of the good ones.
Yeah, I really started following rugby league really strongly around that 2003-4 sort of time, and I remember he was one of my favourite players when playing for the Dragons, like, because he was just that no nonsense forward, and obviously he had such a, I don't know, it was, you could pick him from a mile away because he was so ginger as well, and he played like a typical ginger head bloke, and it was just tough as nails, and week in, week out. Played 5 City Origin games for City as well, which I think is up there with probably one of the higher ones for the City country. I don't think too many players have played more
No,
than.
that's quite a record.
Yeah, and he was always on the top tier of first graders. And week in, week out performer. And I think it's really sad to see players like that go at 40 so young. So yeah, no, very sad to see. Lance, rest in peace, Liam Thompson.
And best wishes to everyone
fit.
surrounded by him, the family, and I know Brandy took it pretty hard. And
Yeah,
it's a tough one to lose. One of the greats like that, very very young.
No, it's going.
Rest in peace, Lance.
But no, I think it's that time again, Liam.
That time of the night
where we can put your hands slightly below the table and open up that big mail sack of yours.
Yes. Excellent. Now, very good sack responses again this week, guys. Thank you. Keep sending them in and we'll keep answering them incorrectly. First question, Nagy, this week comes from Cade McGregor Hines. Now, Cade asks, does Nagy still pay his rent via ATM deposit? I'm a bit confused about this.
Yeah.
Tell us the story, Nagy.
All right. Well, thanks, Cade, for the question.
Thank you, Cade, for the question. It's an excellent question.
You see, I had to get my rent in time. I used to get paid, and then I'd have to get my rent in by the next day.
Okay.
Now, right, and now new fancy pants banks, right, would mean that if I was to transfer it, it would take a day. So I would get it in late. I didn't want to get it in late. I was just transferring it to my housemate at the time, and I want to make sure that they can pay rent on time because that's the kind of housemate I was.
A wonderful housemate.
So I was terrible. But anyway,
was this when you had the bunks?
No, different place. So it's so then there was on a couple of occasions just to make sure that they got the money in their account to pay the rent at the right time that I couldn't go to the bank and go, can you put this in that person's account? Because they didn't do that anymore. They're fancy pants banks. They have these schmanky fucking ATMs that I'd go into the bank and they'd say, no, you have to do it at the ATM. Anyway, I did it a couple of times, maybe got into a bit of a habit of doing it, and then you just put it through, and you could deposit money there, as well as withdraw.
Okay.
But I'd have to withdraw it and then deposit it in because I wasn't with that bank.
Okay, all right. Well, I lied to the listeners. I did know that story. I just wanted you to tell it because I've never heard that before.
It was because bloody Alex Taylor.
Oh, was Al Taylor's fault?
Yeah, fuck you, Al.
Thank you, Al. Cheers. Next question. Daniel Turner asks, was losing Lachlan Fitzgibbon pivotal to our loss? I say yes.
Look, it definitely hurt us. He's an 80-minute back row. He forced an interchange and a bit of a reshuffle in our back row, and then obviously we lost Guerra for 10 minutes of the game as well. There was lots of, and like Guerra, Barnett, and Fitzgibbon has arguably been like, the real backbone of the Knights. And when they're playing well, the team's playing well. They're not perfect players. None of them are. But, they definitely try their guts out. And you just look at how many tries that Guerra and Fitzgibbon have scored this season, which is, I think Fitzgibbon scored 9 or something.
9 tries, that's correct.
Which is, obviously he's just, a young, just a big aggressive forward that can get over the line. Guerra's an absolute workhorse. And, Barney's a bit of a loose cannon, but again, plays these big minutes, which you need to in this shortened interchange. So forcing these interchanges, very nasty head knock. Apparently, he's got no recollection of the game.
None whatsoever.
Which might be all right, looking, a bit further forward.
Probably for the best.
But yeah, and I was very worried about him when Tony A wouldn't let, was taking all the precautions and they asked for the stretcher.
Also funny, the Sharks don't seem to be able to afford a Medicab.
No, it was, well, I noticed that when it was just a bloke carrying the stretcher.
Yeah.
That's a bit worrying.
Yeah.
But Manly also can't afford furniture or lockers.
And we didn't discuss that in the news, but maybe after this sack question, we'll go back to that
and
just shit on Manly for a bit more. But I think he was, like, as we discussed with the attack in the 20 going sideways, Lachlan Fitzgibbon would have been the perfect, foil to that. He would have straightened. He would have changed the point of attack. So, yes, I think losing him
he's
was
one of
absolutely pivotal.
Especially for Mitchell Pearce, looking for a strike player. And he's one of our strike players. That definitely took some of the heat off us.
All right, I'm putting in my own sack question. Liam McNeil asked that, as we saw through the week in the Daily Telegraph, some of the problems that Trent Barrett has had at Manly have been exposed.
Okay.
Now, those problems, if I can recall off the top of my head, Trent had to bring his own backyard furniture to the ground to be used in the sheds.
Yeah.
Trent, his wife, and his daughters, I believe, had to clean the sheds before he started the job. I believe he had to bring more furniture he's basically furnished Brookvale.
They said also that the players didn't
he
have
had to bring
lockers.
his own desk.
He had to bring his own desk?
He had to bring his own desk to Manly to put in the
What?
demountables to work off. The players didn't have lockers, like you mentioned. A lot of them were getting changed in their cars.
Yeah. This is crazy. Like,
My question is, why don't they just piss Manly off?
Oh, well, apparently they've got no money whatsoever. It sounds like everything's been, what is it when the repo guys come and repossessed?
Repossessed,
yeah. It sounds like everything's been repossessed and like de-hinged and taken off the walls and things like that. Like, they don't have a bench in the changing
And
rooms.
the funny thing is, Scott Penn, the owner, has obviously refuted these claims throughout the year where they've got no money. And he said to the press, well, I've personally invested $15 million of my own money into this. Where's he putting the money?
Who knows?
What's this money being used for?
At what stage?
It's not being used on players.
No.
Except DCE. It's all going to him. It's not being used on furniture. It's not being used on, well, I guess the rent. They've got to probably pay the rent.
Sponsors.
But
I don't know. There's got to be questions got to be asked, but it's great to see. This Manly's apparently a shithole, isn't it?
Now that is my other concern, though. The more I think about it, the more rugby league needs Manly.
Yeah.
Because they're just so easy to hate.
Yeah, you need someone to hate.
You need someone to hate. I feel like Melbourne could fill the void. If Manly get booted, we'd all hate Melbourne.
It's just like when you go to work, right? And you've got a team of people that you're working with. Doesn't matter what your job is. You always want to work in a group, and there's someone in that group that you just don't like, and
But it brings the group together.
Yeah, it's a unifying hate for when you're like, Jesus Christ, I hate Carol, and then she'll just.
Well, that's why we got rid of her.
And yeah, Carol, God bless her. So that's just us with Carol.
I've been calling her Karen
So
this whole time.
no wonder she was so awful towards us. But like, when you just hate them and that makes your whole because it doesn't matter what happened. You could get really bad traffic on the way to work, and then Karen fucking coughs, and you're like, oh Christ, Karen, cover your mouth. But you don't say it. You just build up the hate and bitch about her during the lunch hour.
Which is such an important part of rugby league. It came from such a tribal game. It has to be. You have to have those us versus them, and with the professionalism of the game and the way it's expanding and growing, we're starting to lose some of that us versus them mentality.
Yeah.
So, I think Manly got to stay, as much as I hate to say
No,
it, because you got to have someone to hate.
They have to stay.
Everyone needs someone to... And you know what? They hate us too. So
Yeah, that's right.
It goes both ways. Excellent sack question, Liam. Thank you very much. Next question from Marcus James Harborn. Marcus says he thought the boys played with a lot of heart, but just couldn't build anything, with penalties being bit of a double standard, as we discussed earlier. Does this game show how much we depend on Kalen Ponga, our very own... Pong Strong. That was really that. Hashtag Pong Strong. Now Connor is re-injured. The team next week will be interesting.
Well, it looks like Jack Hogg has come back into the side against in the old boys game against the Dragons. Even though he requires surgery on his finger, he's been holding off because he could get a late recall, which is interesting to see. Like that Brock Lamb is not even in. They'd prefer to put a player out who's injured rather than Brock Lamb. So,
which is what Nathan Brown said in the press conference. So there's a few players played against the Sharks, maybe shouldn't have, would have used an extra week, but that's the point of the season we're at now.
So
just digging up whoever we can to get on the field.
Looks like Nick Meaney's still going to play, but obviously he's playing reasonably well, scoring that try.
He's been good.
He's been solid. It's huge losing someone like Kalen Ponga. Out of any side, that's huge. But obviously we've got the Dragons at a good time as well.
Yeah, they've fallen to hell. So I think having Kalen Ponga out injured definitely hinders the team, and then you pile on Watson. It's just the same.
And without Slade Griffin, where we've got the only one in our spine that is our first choice is Mitchell Pearce.
Yeah, it's kind of the same problem we've had all year. But again, like you said, getting the Dragons at a good time because they are an absolute dumpster fire at this moment in time. Justin Guion. Now, this is an interesting one that got me thinking and looking through some past results. What is it about the Sharks that we just can't seem to get the win?
Yeah, we just can't.
You know what? They haven't forgiven us for sending them Matt Johns. They've never forgiven us for that, I think. I think that's it. I think what was it, round 1, 2002? No, it wasn't round 1.
No,
but the first game the Sharks played against the Knights in 2002, Matty Johns played.
Yeah.
He had a howler, got knocked out, dislocated his shoulder.
42-0, I think.
And then the next, the return game, I think the Sharks won by 60.
Oh, really?
And it was the second Sharks game that year. They beat us 62-14 or something. And then ever since, it seems to have been
they had
Sharks running up scores against
They
us.
had a period there, but it's been about since 2014 they've had they've just had it over us. I don't know why.
So like last year, the two games against the Sharks were quite close.
Yeah.
One was, I think, decided by a field goal. The other one was decided by a few points. Contentious as well.
2014, we won our first 4 games. We played the Sharks, and then that that was our first game that we started this huge run of playing like absolute dog shit. So, and that continued on for years. So they could be responsible for a lot here. And it's like they stole our soul, and then they're playing really well since then. Are they some sort of demon witch?
Potentially. We couldn't rule it out.
No.
They're definitely a very unlikable team. So to brand them with that. Also, a second part to Justin Guillon's question, do we think Guerra's sin binning was justified?
No.
Agreed. If you look at the letter of the law, repeat infringement, but it was repeat infringements on bullshit calls.
It's the way that, it's they're waiting for that extra one. As soon as they give that warning, they're looking for anything. Suddenly their eyes are just focused in. So it's it wasn't justified whatsoever.
You know what is justified, Nagy?
What?
Trip to the Commonwealth Hotel.
I tell you what, I love that place. I was there on Saturday night.
Some Knights alumni, I believe, were in the venue.
I like that place so much that I was there early, and then I left, and then I returned.
Twice.
So I was there
two
times.
in one day, in one lunar cycle.
It's a bloody great place, and
Excellent
it was filled with all the who's of Newcastle too.
And Nagy.
And me. I was there harassing all of them.
See, with Nagy and I, we're not the who's who, we're just the who.
We're the what? The you
we're
again?
The why?
We're the hey you behind the bushes. No more of that. But it's a fantastic venue, and I might be there tonight.
Yeah, Moorish Mondays.
Moorish Mondays is a fantastic time to go to the commie. If you like us here at the Joust, please like us on Facebook, and you can find us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, SoundCloud, iTunes,
Twitter,
all of them, all those
Google,
all those pipes. You can Google us, and you can find us as well.
Yeah.
But please,
it's free.
Yeah, make sure you buy your tickets for Old Boys Day, best game of the year against the Dragons. I'm hoping to get 20,000 plus there. It's going to be
that'll be huge.
Fantastic
sellout.
to see all the old boys go around the lap as well. Headed up by our good friend Stephen Crow. So it's going to be fantastic to see, and also possibly a very very special guest next week. So keep your eye out for that one as well. Thank you, Justice. We'll catch you next week. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Never know.
Riding on the range, I've got my hat